Hello viewer, you are tuned to Erimu TV. You are watching Education Matter, and I'm Kamau Mbogwa. With me on here, Mr. David Wawero.
Okay.
Mr. David Wawero is the chairman, the CEO under the publisher, and with him we are going to be discussing matters of human education policy, particularly curriculum reform, as well as the emerging issues in the education sector. Mr. Wawero, please most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Kindly introduce yourself. Give us more about yourself.
Well, I lead a company called Word Alive Publishers. We are in trade publishing, but also in educational publishing. And I'm also chairman of the Kenya Publishers Association, which represents over 105 publishers within Kenya. Very diverse sector: educational publishers, trade publishers, religious publishers, university presses, as well as upcoming and emerging independent publishing houses.
Thank you.
Well, I think the first place to begin would be the role of education in national development, and the role education plays in economic, cultural development. And if you have looked at Kenya's budget over the last couple of years, you'll recognize that education has always had the lion's share, the biggest part of the budget, allocation of the budget, goes to education, the Ministry of Education. And the reason for this is that human capital is the real asset of any nation. And developing human capital that can compete regionally, globally, that will be able to drive the economy, that will be able to offer the kind of leadership that positions Kenya as a serious major player. Education plays a very critical role. So that's number one. Number two, the Kenya's education curriculum has not been reviewed for the last 13 years, and the last time it was reformed was about 32 years ago.
Do you then think that by changing or reforming the curriculum, we are going to address this issue? And again, as to respond to that, there is this one of competence. What exactly do you talk about competence? So the issue of the
The reason of reforming any curriculum is to address the shortcomings that the existing curriculum has and is not addressing, and the competency-based curriculum is basically moving away from a knowledge-based cramming kind of learning, where the teacher is the center, downloading information on kids who must take all the notes and try to cram everything and regurgitate that in the exam. What the competency-based curriculum does is basically to make the learner the center of learning and structure learning in such a way that most of it is self-discovery, most of it is skill-based, and secondly is that the old curriculum is like one jacket that everybody must fit in.
I would like to hear from you, coming from the publishing industry. How ready are you for that? Have you been thoroughly inducted? Are you involved? And do you feel like the right thing to do? And you, as a publisher?
The Kenya publishing sector is the single most biggest provider of educational instructional materials within the region. Whether it is in Rwanda, Kenyan publishers basically constitute or provide up to about 70% of all the instructional materials. Rwanda recently rolled out this year the competency-based curriculum. Uganda has had a competency-based curriculum the last couple of years. Kenyan publishers supply up to about 50% of this. instructional materials. If you go to Zambia and if you go to Malawi, Kenya's publishing industry basically dominates the provision of instructional materials. So the Kenyan publishers are completely ready to provide instructional materials for the new curriculum.
I want to have a very clean and honest opinion. Do you think the government has given you the chance to deliver the content of the year? Because I do know, rightly or wrongly, and they have to certainly like, I do know that some content has come from KCB. What's the situation?
You see, that's usually the problem with government. That when some people in government don't understand things as they ought to, they may make very short-sighted decisions. And you sometimes find that there are government departments who, rather than honor the commitments we have made in our constitution and in documents like the Kenya Development Vision 2030 of creating strong symbiotic relationships between government and private sector, you find that there are people in government who want to be on a perpetual mode of antagonizing private sector. Well, we are working very hard to make sure that we work together for the good of the Kenyan child. But you will also always find bureaucrats who, for the lack of complete understanding, or that they are facilitators, they are not implementers, may want to make government become like the implementer. And you have seen, you have seen where government has wanted to provide content. I mean, where in the world do you find a progressive government starting to compete with private sector to offer services? Government shouldn't do that. That's number one. You've also seen recently, an attempt, for government to get into book distribution. Where in the world do you have government involving itself in those matters? Government ought to make policy. The CS says that there's a lot of revenue leakage. Precisely. They have revenue leakage simply because they do not conduct the audit that is required to be done. Let me ask you, if they are unable to audit the funds that they distribute to schools, how does that influence private sector? The inability of government to perform their job should not be transferred to penalize private sector for failure of delivery on the government side. What government needs to do is to streamline their processes, ensure that they hold teachers accountable, and make sure that all the funds that go into the procurement and supply of instructional materials actually goes to do exactly that.
Yeah. Still on the issue of the content, help me out. Let me get it very clear. I do understand that as far as the ICT digital literacy is concerned, we have matters to do with devices, we have something to do with platforms, we have content. Would you comment on the platform? Is the platform ready that now we can say that once the devices are in the school, the real consumption of the content becomes very simple, that the content from one right publishers, from now on, all of them will meet at the central point. We do not have a case of maybe the facilities or the devices are not ready to receive some content from some sources. I would like to hear you as a publisher. What is your take as far as the platform?
Well, two things. One is that part of the testing that's being done at the proof of concept stage and at the piloting stage. One is to make sure that the devices that have been proposed can actually handle the content.
DOP largely touches on the lower level, the class 1, 2 levels. And when I bring ICT integration, I'm looking at it across the board, from nursery, FS to all the way up to industry. What would you say, as far as ICT is concerned so far in the other areas besides the market? What would you say over and about on the whole education sector? Where are we? Are we doing fine, or are we lost?
Well, I don't think we lost it because we are still at the baby stages, and because there has not been a very clear policy on. So where policy lacks, then you will have very ununiform implementation of a program. And I must say that it's only now that government is developing an ICT strategy for schools, and we've got to begin somewhere, and that's why we are starting at the lower levels, standard 1 and 2, and obviously when standard 2s graduate to the next year, the following to standard 3, it is expected that it will have been scaled up, to a higher level. So I would say there's always a starting point. I don't want to really point an accusing finger to government. The problem sometimes is that government is very ambitious and it is short or in terms of the timelines within which government wants to implement some programs. We personally think that these would have been better implemented over a period of time. But again, that didn't happen. But we have to make do with what we have.
Yeah. You are an association.
Yes.
It means you are a group of publishers.
Absolutely.
So I would expect then you have articulated that argument. How have you done it, and how have you
I mean, we have articulated that argument across every single ministry that matters, at the Ministry of Education with the highest officers possible, at the National Treasury with the highest officers possible, with KRA with the highest officers possible, with the Parliamentary Budget Office. We have talked to the Finance, Trade and Planning Committee. We have talked to the Education Secretary. You always think you have had a good discussion. Then some of them don't really, quite frankly, seem to understand the entire, the scope, or the magnitude of this issue. And at the end of the day, we had hoped, for example, that the National Treasury would include, our discussions in the budget speech, and they were left out. They included everything else that affects the rich, and they removed the privileged.
What do you do now?
Our next course is that we will do all we can to see if there will be an amendment to that bill, so that government can serve not just the rich and the privileged, but including those people who must, because education is a basic right in the Kenyan Constitution. Quality education is a basic right. Now, taxing books, when they say you have given free education, and then they remove most of that money they have given, they remove it by VAT, it means that schools can only get less books. And if you have, research shows that quality education, that access to books and reading is a prerequisite, to quality education.
New policy.
You see, again, I can perfectly understand government's frustration with the runaway cheating of exams. The unfortunate thing is that government analyzes problems well, but suggests the wrong prescription. Now, why? Because, see, the problem of exam cheating is not with the motivational speaker. It is not on the parents who are visiting to give moral support to their kids. Which research? Which research? I mean, the only people who can leak exams is Kenya National Examination, because parents don't set exams. They actually don't. And exams are not supposed to be in public domain so that you can avail them on their smartphones. The reality is there is no leak at the national examination. How else would people access the exams? Whether you have the latest smartphone or you have whatever it is. It's impossible. So the real problem, the first problem, is to deal with the management and administration of exam papers at the National Examination Council, to ensure that the ongoing exercise of purging people who have made a career out of destroying the lives of our kids and diluting our education sector, those careerists, first of all, are purged from the system, get people of integrity, and make sure that we have, we have proper management. I mean, the Kenya National Examination Council ought to, if it is not, a high security institution.
We need this virus that don't you think that we could also be discussing the ground of maybe on some unfair, unrealistic expectations?
Well, the thing is that if anything, food, if not properly regulated, can be bad. But it doesn't mean because somebody overeats, doesn't eat a balanced diet, doesn't watch what they eat, food is therefore bad. See, the problem is that we have had an unregulated system of having all these people go to schools, and it's true a number of them are not balanced. A number of them, shouldn't really be exposed to our kids, but that doesn't mean that our students don't need motivation and inspiration. Yeah.
We are coming to a close of the show. Please, I'll give you a chance now to say one other thing, closing the matter.
Well, I think first of all is to just congratulate Elimu TV for the bold step of recognizing that education is the single most tool that determines our future as a nation, that gives our kids and our posterity the chance of success in life and in their careers, and the single most thing that would give Kenya competitive edge. But secondly is to just request our Ministry of Education and the entire government to recognize that we need to place a higher value on knowledge and invest more on content, and invest much more in building a culture of reading. And thirdly, to ensure that in implementing the new curriculum, we must not be overexcited about implementing sooner rather than later and compromise the quality of the new curriculum. Otherwise, I think Kenya is a leader in education, and we must maintain that as a competitive edge.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, viewer. It was a nice show from our resource person. We'll be giving you more of the same. It's a curriculum form, clarifying